on the VTRN Sports app.
Fox News, I'm Gianna Gelosi. David Crowley eking out a narrow victory in last night's Democratic primary for Wisconsin governor.
Today, I stand before you filled with gratitude, with humility, and hope as I formally accept the Democratic nomination to be the next governor of the great state of Wisconsin.
Now, the result defied polls that showed Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong with a commanding double-digit lead. Over in South Carolina, the late Senator Lindsey Graham's sister, Darlene, who's now governor, is headed to an August 25th runoff.
She'll be facing off against Congressman Ralph Norman of Rock Hill. He's been serving in Congress since 2017. Senator Graham is working with the same staff Lindsey Graham had to get out the vote, and she told reporters last night the last few weeks have been a whirlwind.
That's Fox's Mark Meredith. America's listening to Fox News.
Your pet is missing. That sudden panic, the racing questions, the worry of what could happen. It's overwhelming. Petco Love Lost is here to help. This free, non-profit-powered service uses photo matching technology to search the largest national lost and found pet database, including pets from shelters, neighbors, and social media, helping bring pets back to the people who love them. And it works. Every day, Petco Love Lost reunites pets with their families. A reunion happens every 4 minutes. Simply upload a photo of your lost pet or one you found, and Petco Love Lost's photo matching technology goes to work instantly. You can even register your pet in advance, so if the unthinkable happens, reporting them lost and helping bring them home is as easy as the click of a button. Every pet deserves a way home. Visit PetcoLoveLost.org to register your pet or upload a photo and search for a lost or found pet today.
A message from Joshua Jackson, actor and Fair Volunteer Ambassador.
Food allergy is a serious, life-threatening disease that impacts over 33 million Americans. When your immune system sees certain food proteins as a threat, every bite matters. But here's the good news. There have been advancements in the treatment of food allergies, and with one voice, we can create better awareness. Because in the FAIR community, the disease doesn't own us. We own our journey. Talk to an allergist to understand your options. Visit foodallergy.org/empower to learn more.
The number 3, one of the most important and powerful numbers on so many levels. And for your wallet, it's powerful at InstantRadioDeals.com. Enter the promo code FIRE at checkout for 33.3% off the list price of select items. Liberty Flames individual game tickets, Liberty Flames season tickets for the upcoming football season, and Hill City Howlers skyboxes and general admission with a $10 food voucher. All through the end of August. 33.3% off the list price of those items when you enter the promo code FIRE at checkout.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, and asking your smart speaker, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane and JJ Hendrickson.
There's naturally going to be some kind of fall off for the LCA Bulldogs just because, I mean, you're talking about 35 to 40 years of experience from Frank Rocco, 20 of them at LCA, multiple state championships, and an unprecedented run of success. If you're expecting it to be this drastic fall off this season, I wouldn't hold my breath on that. Over the long haul, who knows? I don't think we've got a Mark Helfrich at Oregon example where this was before everyone caught up to his ideas, but Chip Kelly had it running. He left. Mark Helfrich ends up taking over. They looked good for a year. That was the year they went to Virginia and waxed them like 59-10 with Marcus Mariota scoring on the third play of the game on a QB draw for like 75 yards. And then the next year, you started to see the erosion, if you will. I don't think it's going to be drastic even to that extent over the long haul of LCA. But I definitely don't think it's going to be that big of a drop-off this year. There are a number of reasons why this is the case. We've touched on the timing of it being a big deal, including with Frank Rocco when we spoke with him as he announced his retirement back in early January. Fast Lane, Ed Lane, to go way back into the archives if you want to listen, because...
And guess what? We keep receipts.
Right there. But I think the timing was beneficial. That's one of the reasons. And Roman Aronson, who plays for LCA and spoke at Seminole District Football Media Days, admitted as such that the timing was one of the reasons and factors that has made the transition smooth from Rocco to Meeks.
I would say that I like that it was a familiar face, but there was definitely a higher tempo set in a younger coaching staff. I mean, I already worked pretty closely with Coach Meeks, and Coach Priv is the other coach that kind of moved up a little bit. So I was already used to them, but it was good to get a higher tempo and more of like a player's coach that really Coach Rocco pushed us to be the best. And so Coach Meeks is already doing that and has shown that he is ready to go into this forward season.
The timing of it is big. Adding your own wrinkles of how you operate is big. And having an offseason to get acclimated to that are crucial things for the LCA Bulldogs. Look, let's be real. They are, you could argue they're the gold standard right now in high school football in the area and certainly in the Seminole District because they've been the most consistently dominant team. And yes, it helps to have had Gideon Davidson, but they've got a really strong coaching staff across the board, even across from head coach Frank Rocco, or aside from the transition from Frank Rocco to Tyler Meeks. So the timing of it is big, but we just mentioned one of the other things. Staff retention, as big of an asset as anything, as Tyler Meeks was very candid and honest in assessing something that's beneficial for him.
Super blessed. The majority of the staff stayed intact. We've had a couple of little kind of rearrangements, but other than that, I mean, everybody's continued forward. So we're extremely blessed. It's been a huge advantage. Not only myself continuing, but the coaches, almost everyone has the same position coach, or there might have been a couple of rearrangements or people they've already known or worked with in the past.
There are certainly going to be differences, but I mean, no need to reinvent the wheel. Now, you have to put some of your spin on it. If you literally just try to carbon copy what someone else did and you don't really bring that many new ideas or fresh energy and approach, I will say that can be a challenge, and it's one of those perils of promoting a longtime assistant. People, again, we mentioned the Mark Helfrich at Oregon example where he took over for Chip Kelly and everything eroded. There are other examples where you may have had a good head coach, even a legendary head coach, and the successor has worked out. The most obvious in our backyard is in basketball, where John Shire, I know he hasn't won a championship at Duke, but he's gotten them to the Final Four, and he's consistently been in the top 5 in the country down in Durham and continues to procure players at a high level. Insert your jokes for LCA procuring players. Everybody essentially has to be recruited because our private school and people come from outside the district. But the reality when you're looking at it from a football standpoint, I think one of the things is the timing of it. The other is you have a level of staff retention. So you have a lot of the same voices in the ears and the same things being taught to the LCA players. So sure, you're losing 30 to 40 years of head coaching, of coaching experience, 20 years of at LCA head coaching experience. I think it's natural to say there will be somewhat of an adjustment and maybe even a fall off just because of, Frank Rocco had it running at a pretty high level when he stepped away. They lost in the state semifinals, but could easily have been in the championship game and maybe wanted. They had a big lead at Kettle Run and let that slip away. So you put all that in a blender and say, I think it's natural to expect there to be a little bit of slippage, but I'm not holding my breath if I'm a fan of someone in the Seminole District that is not LCA, that this is going to be some grand fall where you go, oh my goodness, they really missed Rocco. What a train wreck.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges I feel like when taking over from a head coach is you have to find that balance between keeping the culture that you've had for all those years that made you successful and putting your own spin on it. You need to have your own culture. I'm sure the head coach, when he's coming in, he has some sort of a general idea of what he wants this team and its identity to be. And it's all about a matter of finding that without destroying what the previous coach has built. So LCA has been a powerhouse for, all my life pretty much. I'm thinking about it. LCA has been elite. So always curious how these regime changes are going to go. So we'll see what happens, Ed.
So that's what you'll get from LCA is that transition, if you will, from a coaching staff. Again, I don't expect it to be a drop-off. Part of it's the staff retention around head coach Tyler Meeks. Some of it are things that are good. First of all, there will be differences between Tyler Meeks and Frank Rocco. Players spoke about it Luke Gaither doesn't expect there to be a ton, but did document a couple as he's the quarterback of the LCA offense.
I personally don't feel like there is a huge difference. Maybe just, a younger coach coming in, trying to build a program. That's probably the biggest difference that I see. But, they're both pretty straightforward and good coaches.
Now, the style in which messages are delivered, I don't think it's bad the way Frank Rocco did it. It never seemed to be so perilous that players and parents were fleeing the program. I mean, they had a high level of success, consistency. I do think some of it is Frank Rocco's personality, and there's some good to that as well. More on that in a moment. But there are differences, and Robert Payne, one of the standout offensive linemen for LCA, had this to say.
I'd say the biggest difference is just be personal or football, either way. Just how much practice feels. I don't want to say more like free, but how we can make mistakes, but he'll coach us up, and we'll still go full effort and not getting kind of like chewed out in a sense, but to be able to learn from what you made a mistake on and to continue on and to do the right thing the next time.
The way in which you deliver the message, I mean, essentially saying there's a level of more positive reinforcement. I think that can work to an extent. And for a modern athlete, I don't think it's bad. I think LCA, there was enough culture of assistant coaches around who've been around Rocco, who are familiar with old school but also new style coaching to been able to bridge the gap. And I think there's a change to that. I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing, though, because I am not of the belief that you have to, sunshine and rainbows this thing and you can't yell at kids or be critical. Sometimes it's warranted and it has to happen, whether you like it or not. And some of it's on the kids, and let's be real here. I'm not saying this about LCA, I'm just saying in general. It's also on their parents for understanding that you don't always need to, but sometimes there needs to be a firmness that may make your kid cry because they're just not used to it and haven't gotten it at home. So that's part of it. But some of it's also, I think, the personality of Frank Rocco. And I don't think you're going to lose this with Tyler Meeks, because one of the reasons why you might mention the negative coaching, I don't know if it's negative as much as being a stickler. You have to be a stickler about the fine points. LCA, I've heard this before, and people have corroborated this to me. Here's an example. Jay Grove, their offensive line coach. Familiar with him, JJ?
Yeah, I've heard the name for sure.
Played in the NFL with the Raiders and Dolphins. Remington Award winner, top offensive lineman at Virginia Tech a couple of decades ago. And has churned out really good offensive lines at LCA and before that at Jefferson Forest. Clearly knows what he's doing as a head coach. But apparently, it's just what I've heard, he does not grade on like a pass or a fail level or an A or a B. He just grades on footwork, body angles and positions, hand placement. Like, that's a different level of attention to detail. And when you're pointing that out, it's really hard to be correct in all those areas, meaning there's going to be some negative coaching and reinforcement. And players have to understand that. And it sounds like LCA understands that, but also maybe allow the assistant coaches to have that style. And then you have a different type of approach and delivery. But I don't think it's totally that way, because Tyler Meeks mentioned as well that one of the things he is trying to replicate from Frank Rocco is attention to detail.
For me, the biggest difference or biggest challenge is just I want to make sure that there are things that, you have a coach that was 35 years, 40-year experience, was a legend, and he was, extremely attention to detail. And I think it's my responsibility to make sure that we don't let things slip through the cracks and we're not missing things. So I don't know that I've thought a lot about the difference as much as I've just been trying to stress and be meticulous and making sure there aren't things like that are slipping through the cracks.
That's inevitably just what's going to happen. Like, I mean, you probably experienced it already with me. I'm kind of a stickler for that as well. I'd imagine sometimes it grates on your nerves. It has on pretty much everyone who's worked here. As far as being negative, I've had to work on that. But as far as just pointing out things that are small, minute things, but wanting it done a certain way, I mean, JJ, just to get into the weeds for a moment. JJ does the audiograms. I put a lot of them in an email of how I want them done. I'll put it down to the second in the exact phrasing of how it should sound and look. Like, there's a level of meticulousness where, I've worked with other bosses. I don't know if I call them leaders, but bosses where it's just pull it out. And then you do it, and it's not what they want because they're just too lazy to actually give attention to detail. The person administering attention to detail, they have to be the ones, first and foremost, to not have that lazy streak and to fight that. And that's one of the things that Tyler Meeks seems to understand. And it's a positive for LCA that, again, you're going to lose some coaching knowledge and acumen. I think you're naive to not think there's just going to be a fall off from 40-ish years of coaching and 20+ years of LCA head coaching time, that it's not going to happen. But I don't think it's going to be that drastic, and that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah, I love to hear that attention to detail from a head coach. And like we were talking about with the positive and negative reinforcement, once again, it's about finding that balance. You've got to build these guys up, build their confidence, but you don't want to make it to a point where they're too overconfident and doing things you don't want them doing. Quote the movie Whiplash, J.K. Simmons, he said there are no two words worse than good job. So I don't entirely agree with that, but I totally see his point. If you're building them up too much, they'll become complacent, and that is absolutely something you cannot have for a football team. Whereas the other end, if you're being too negative, guys are going to break down. They're not going to want to play for you. They're not going to want to put on the jersey anymore. So it's all about finding that balance once more, Ed.
I think you can err on one side. Like, people are naturally going to err on a little bit more positive reinforcement or a little bit critical. But I've had bosses before where their philosophy has been keep dangling the carrot out there, but never let someone get it, because once they get it, what's going to happen to their motivation? That's trash leadership. Like, that's trash leadership. Let's call it what it is. Because you haven't hired the person and cultivated a culture to where they're going to want to build upon that. And that's part of what a coach is you do provide those carrots and give them the carrots and the rewards. But you also create a culture where, all right, we've done this right. That's fantastic. We've got something where you can feel confident in. But what else can we do to keep getting better about that? Knowing we've got a good base, we can fall back on that. That's good. But also finding ways to keep being ever so meticulous and getting attention to detail. And that's, you have former college players. You mentioned Aaron Stam, who played at Liberty, Jake Grove. There are plenty of others on staff that have college experience. That is one of the values. I'm not trying to sound like a total billboard for LCA football, because other programs in the area, I think the successful ones, it's not hard to figure out, but Heritage and JF also, of having the right blend of attention to detail and expectations with everything else. But, it's the value and the understanding that some of it's just attacking human nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think regardless, each team's a new team. So like 2026, LCA hadn't won a game yet. 2025 hadn't won a game until we played. So I think that is an important thing to keep in as much as we can, maintain that mentality. And we've talked a lot about this offseason is we want to attack human nature. We don't want to allow any complacency or entitlement to set in our minds. And I think that saying, oh, we got the target on our backs, opens the door for thinking like, yeah, well, that means we're the best or we're top or whatever, but we haven't won a game.
Bryson Gordon of newsadvance.com will have some more thoughts on that, because he was with us at Seminole District Football Media Days. We'll also ask him about Rustburg, Brookville, and Amherst, our subjects from the last couple of days of this. We're on team number 4 here in the fast lane. But attacking human nature. And look, there is an element of psychology that goes into this, because Tyler Meeks mentioned something that I will say I think you can snicker at a little bit, of wanting to be the hunted instead of the hunter.
I mean, I've been trying to preach to these guys to not think about it in those terms. That we're trying to we want to hunt and we want to go after people and not think about our kind of vantage point of what people may think, target, whatever, those kind of things. I think as much as possible, we want to be the ones that are dictating, trying to be the best that we can be, and then try to we're not worried about what other people think about us. We're worried about trying to be the best we can be and matching up the opponents we play.
I mean, look, they've won 2 state championships and finished in the state semifinals in the last 3 years. So, there's some snickering that is deserved at the wanting to be the hunted, not the hunter. And they've been Seminole District champions the entire time. So, who are we kidding, JJ? They are the hunted. Now, I think when you lose to Kettle Run in the state semis last year, you can frame it in a different way. It's a little bit more believable than if they had gone on and won a 3rd championship. That's a harder message to sell. But I think also it is, again, finding ways to create a level of urgency and embracing a standard that is clearly very high at LCA.
Yeah, I mean, to say they're not the hunted does feel kind of crazy, Ed. I'm going to agree with you there. They've been too successful as of late, but I like what the coach is going for here with the mentality. He mentioned specifically complacency. They do not want to become complacent, and complacent is what will kill you as a franchise. Think of all these great dynasties. Think of the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL. There's no complacency there from Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. They've constantly kept evolving, kept getting better, and they've kind of been the hunted the whole time. But, I mean, up until last year, they've been deep playoff runs year after year. So that's something I really think is interesting to say they're not the hunted.
For sure. Meanwhile, the other key thing of why the LCA Bulldogs can be a team that doesn't have a big fall off is, I don't think this is talked about a lot either. There's the old saying, great teams are player led, but they have 20 plus seniors coming back, which helps with being a player led operation, as Tyler Meeks, the new LCA head coach, mentioned at Seminole District Football Media Days.
Yeah, it's huge. We preached all offseason that good teams can be coach led, but great teams must be player led. And we're blessed to we've got 22 seniors. They're experienced. And not only 22 seniors, but they're 22 guys that, for the most part, they've played in significant roles and they've all been called upon and have answered the call. Certainly that's been great. Not only for me to be able to say, there's certain things Roman just understands we can get to C and D rather than have to spend all the time on A and B. But then that allows us to bring the guys that are the other guys, they're younger guys that are along a little quicker, because we can point to them like, hey, you see this on video, Roman's first step, that's what we want it to look like. And we're not trying to explain something that doesn't exist in their mind. So yeah, it's been huge. It's been a huge advantage, and it's great group to be around.
It's easy to be player led when you have that many seniors, and a lot of them have been key parts of success. There is an element of that goes into work, but the foundation is there, and the vocalness and the attitude with which LCA has shown itself, I think, are part of the reasons why they are a team that, again, I think there'll be a little bit of a slippage because you're losing a lot with Frank Rocco, but I don't think it's going to be this drastic fall from grace that some people may be hoping and wishing for. They will still be a difficult out and still be near the top of the Seminole District. Bryson Gordon might disagree with us. He'll share his thoughts around 5:35 today here in the Fast Lane. But when we return, wouldn't you like to have $12 billion just lying around? Is it enough or not? And socializing a new concept. What happens when you're the only one who's really doing it? We'll discuss all that when we return here in the Fast Lane.
Your all-access preseason pass to the Flames is here. Inside Liberty Football, meet the team. Saturday, August 22nd at Williams Stadium, indoor practice field in Lynchburg. Gates open at 1 o'clock. Tour the stadium and the Flames locker room. Hear from head coach Jamie Chadwell and athletics director Ian McCall. Games for kids versus players, autographs, see the marching band, cheer and dance teams, plus food trucks. Admission is free. August 22nd, 1 p.m. Get inside Liberty Football.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real technology so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
The number 3, one of the most important and powerful numbers on so many levels. And for your wallet, it's powerful at InstantRadioDeals.com. Enter the promo code FIRE at checkout for 33.3% off the list price of select items. Liberty Flames individual game tickets, Liberty Flames season tickets for the upcoming football season, and Hill City Howlers skyboxes and general admission with a $10 food voucher. All through the end of August. 33.3% off the list price of those items when you enter the promo code FIRE at checkout.
Come join the chat or give us a piece of your mind. JJ Hendrickson 27 and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
There's a reason Trost Law, they have been in business for, as LeBron reminds us,
not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4,
but over 4 decades, because you think you've seen it all or heard it all involving the road, and then
it's time for Fast 5 at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
Trost Law exists because of situations like Kyle Shanahan, where he has told reporters that his automobile, it's a very expensive battery-powered automotive car. We're not mentioning names because they're not a sponsor, but you can probably use your imagination here. That it was on autopilot before his accident on 7-Eleven. Shout out to Ice Cube. And Shanahan does not know whether it malfunctioned or Shanahan accidentally turned it off autopilot when he retrieved his phone from the back seat. Okay, couple of things to unpack here. One, worth unpacking. He doesn't know which one happened. Are we believing this? Maybe not. Number two, people get distracted by their phones. Please do your best, especially if you have a car that has Bluetooth capabilities. I'm going to presume this very expensive battery-powered car that is, I believe, made in San Francisco, made in California, is capable of offering that service. So why do you need to go scrounging for your phone? The text, the tweet, the Instagram post, even if it's from a hot fly honey, as Will Smith back in the day would say, it can wait. The other thing is this. Let's just say it was on autopilot when the accident occurred. There's a reason why I don't subscribe to the Bible of AI and autopilot. They are great tools and helpful. Cruise control, autopilot, or anything else. But this is why I fear self-driving cars, because all it takes is one malfunction and you trusted something that is now bent over backwards and puts you in a bind, and people now will need the services of Trost Law because of these type of situations.
Yeah, that aspect of self-driving cars is definitely a little concerning, just thinking about what would go wrong. It could cause a life. But when it comes to this, Ed, I'm not buying the whole turn-off autopilot thing at all from Kyle Shanahan. I think he had it on the this is purely speculation, but I think he had it on the manual mode the whole time, went back to reach his phone, got in the accident, and then was looking for some excuse to make it not seem as boneheaded. I think that's what happened in reality.
That and maybe a CYA moment in case somebody wants to sue him.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not buying his story at all here. And yeah, I feel like he's just scrambling for an excuse here as a CYA moment, as you said, Ed.
Speaking of motor vehicles, lawsuits, and even the San Francisco 49ers.
Number 4.
Have you seen this story?
I haven't, actually.
49ers left tackle Trent Williams, one of the premier offensive linemen in the NFL, has been sued for allegedly signing a 4-year lease with a high-end sports car manufacturer that may or may not have an SUV named after a type of hot pepper and may not have a sports car named after the numbers that you call in a medical emergency or in a life situation. Apparently, he had a 4-year lease on this car starting in 2021, made the first 2 payments, and then has missed the last. Well, let's let LeBron tell us.
Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7.
Not 7 times 6. He's missed the last 46 payments Trent Williams has on this. A couple things. First of all, I get it. You may like your fancy sports car, but couldn't you work out or have your agent work out some type of a contract with an auto dealership where you're able to drive the car around as part of your contract and endorsement deal? And then on top of that, you're not having to worry about payments because they're giving you the fancy car to drive around. And I get it. You have a lot of money. You can do what you will. Which begs the other question. Why are you missing payments if you're worth this much? Just stroke the check and get the problem out of the way. Now, I understand there are a lot of athletes who won't make these payments, I'm going to use air quotes here, on principle. Points of, quote, pride, end quote, which pride comes before the falleth, like in this case. But what, really? You're not making the payments either because you didn't want to do it and you thought you were beneath it. I'm all for these type of lawsuits. Just make the payment when you're signing $30+ million a year contracts as one of the highest paid left tackles. I get it. Paying a lot for a sports car, maybe not the best use of money for normal people. You're not normal. Pay it. Get the thing out of the way. Don't let it drag out like this.
Yeah, this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we're talking about a Hall of Fame caliber player here not making car payments. I mean, if
the repo man.
Yeah, if you can't make car payments, I don't know what possibly could go wrong here. You know, it's not a financial issue. He's handsomely paid. Is it just laziness, complacency? Like, I don't even understand what possibly could go wrong here.
Or is it the arrogance and ego? Like, I've known of athletes, and I know of one who has apparently played in the Commonwealth of Virginia and has gone on to the professional ranks. We won't mention sports. But this person drew a line on the tip line at a restaurant. Dude, you're making millions of dollars in professional sports. That's low class. When bad stuff happens to people like that, that's called karma.
Yeah, I worked in the food service industry for actually about 8 years, Ed. So hearing that story is kind of infuriating. If you've got all this kind of money in the world, just make the payments, do the things that everyone else does. Like, I get you're special, you're a talented athlete, but at the end of the day, you're just a human like the rest of us. Do what you're supposed to do. And even this, I don't understand how it just goes to the back of your mind for 46 payments. I mean,
every time you get in the car, aren't you thinking about it?
yeah, exactly. And I mean, that would just be weighing on my mind. Yeah, I would be waiting for the lawsuit to come. And guess what, Mr. Williams? The lawsuit's here. It's ready for you.
And now you have to pay all this additional interest on top of that?
It's just foolish overall. There's no rational explanation for this situation at all. I don't see a world where you could explain this.
We'll get to more money matters in a moment. But
Number 3.
Eagles left tackle Lane Johnson, or right tackle, excuse me. I should know this. I'm an Eagles fan. He has said that this is probably his last year. Note that word there. First of all, there's some wiggle room. He was away from 4 practices last week dealing with a personal matter. His mom and dad are both experiencing serious health complications. Kids are starting to age. Look, he's been a dominant player for a while, but you could argue the lack of attention to the family ultimately is what got Tom Brady in the end. Like, he took great care of his body, but he'd been divorced a couple of times, apparently been, a wandering eye, if you will. Those are the rumors that are out there. He's got kids as well. Maybe the second wife was a little bit more demanding of his time and energy and ultimately wanting him to stop because of the amount of time it takes to perform at a high level. I get it. When you're committed to performing something at a high level, and you're in and I feel like I'm in this category as well. If you're going to do it, it's worth doing it well, which means doing it the right way, which means embracing all the hard elements. There does come a point where you have to weigh those pros and cons. I'm a runner. I used to run more races. I still run races now, but I've had to scale back because I've had to reframe priorities. And there are other examples in my personal life as well. And I'm not nearly that type of performer and level. I often wonder just what we do here at the Virginia Talk Radio Network in the Fast Lane. And it's for others to grade how good we are or are not at that. I'd like to think we do a pretty good job, but it's a major time commitment. So I get that angle from it for an athlete. I think, if anything, you could keep playing and collecting a check, but I admire the athletes who say, look, I'm going to step away because I might be able to collect a check, but I'm not going to be the best version of myself. And I only want to go out there and compete when I believe I can be the best version of myself.
No, I totally agree with everything you said there, Ed. I do think it's interesting how he said probably leaving the door open in case he does want to come back. But I think another angle we got to look at here is just the health. I mean, let's be real. Playing in the NFL long term, it is not good for your body. Lane Johnson's up to 36 years old. Who knows what will happen this year? And I mean, we just don't really know what's going up in the heads of these guys. I mean, with regards to CTE, Lane Johnson is playing a very physical position. And I mean, the earlier you can stop, the better. So I think overall, this is a really good decision for him, his family, and everyone around him.
You mentioned CTE. We don't even know about that, but we know he's had ankle injuries. He's had knee issues that have popped up in the last couple of years. He played through the playoffs a couple of years ago, dealing with a hip muscle groin area tear as well, which is really painful. It just, over time, it's not the will to go out there on a Sunday at night or Sunday afternoon or Thursday night or Monday night or even in the playoffs. It's the will to prepare and do all that stuff. That's where it gets to be real challenging. Meanwhile, socializing in
Number 2.
ESPN, they are apparently socializing with college football playoff leaders, a 16-team format with 4 playing games as well for the final 4 spots into the field, which would make it a total of 20 teams, or a version where it would be seeds 13 through 16. This is seemingly only their idea. Everyone else seems to want to expand. ESPN socializing seems like code for we want to do what we can to get to 16 because that's the number where we're comfortable going. But anything larger than that, ESPN doesn't have the ability to fully fund the playoff and have the control of how it works. And therefore, when they end up losing,
lots of power,
someone else gets involved, and all of a sudden the entire dynamic changes, including their grip on a big portion of college football.
Yeah, I will say as a whole, I really don't mind the format they proposed, but like you said, I just don't think it has much momentum. Everyone wants to expand more than that. And ESPN, like you said, I think it might be just a little bit of a power grab here. I think they want to stay as powerful and relevant as possible, and this might be the way they think they can do that the best.
2 worries on the Lake Show in
Number 1.
First one, anybody worried about Russell Westbrook retiring today, or is this more he finally realized the NBA has retired him and his tenure is wrapping up because of that?
Yeah, I think Russell Westbrook would still be playing if he felt he could to the best of his ability. But I mean, we're talking about an MVP player, a first ballot Hall of Famer for sure, Mr. Triple Double, the most triple doubles ever. But really, ever since the time he left the Thunder and went to Houston, his legacy has just been diminishing. He hasn't been performing the same way he was younger. His game just hasn't aged very gracefully. He relied a lot on athleticism. Because of that, he's gotten a lot of harsh criticism over the past, 5, 6, 7 years. He's gotten some really, really bad nicknames that I know he is not a fan of. So I like the decision to retire now. I almost wonder if he could have done it a few years earlier, if that would have had a better impact on his legacy. But like I said, a first ballot Hall of Famer regardless.
Ultimately good, but like a lot of athletes, you think you can keep playing and preparing and practicing and working your way through the challenges until you get to the end and you realize your body and mind have finally given you a conclusion that it just ain't happening. When we return tomorrow in the Fast Lane, we may even have some more on the Los Angeles Lakers because of that $12 billion sale that happened today. We have some alternative thoughts on that. But when we return, does Bryson Gordon have alternative thoughts from ours on any of the teams we've previewed so far for Seminole District Football Media Days? Plus, meeting with the assistant coaches for the Liberty Flames and takeaways from Jamie Chadwell's press conference as well. All of that still to come. This is the Fast Lane on the VTRN Sports app and Fast Lane Ed Lane wherever you listen to podcasts.
Mark Dalton here with the Terry Auto Group. If you don't love your car, then you're simply just driving the wrong one. At Terry Volkswagen, Terry Subaru, Terry Auto Outlet, and the Terry Clearance Center, we've got the perfect new or used car for you. We make your car buying experience easy. Need help with imperfect credit? No problem. Our team works hard to get you approved and back on the road. Because when you shop at Terry, you drive away happy. Visit us at any of our 4 locations or online at terryautogroup.com. Terry Auto Group. You'll love our cars.
Midday hunger hitting you hard? Swing by Macadoo's for our $8.95 weekday lunch specials. Whether you're craving a classic crunch or something fresh, we've got you covered. Chicken tender basket featuring crispy golden tenders served with fries. The Macadoo's Chef Salad, the healthy, loaded favorite that will hit the spot. Hit back against your lunchtime hunger at Macadoo's with eats that won't break the bank.
It's time to share it and fun. Just to be there the only one. Just to be there at Macadoo's.
We'll see you at the Deuce.
The number 3, one of the most important and powerful numbers on so many levels. And for your wallet, it's powerful at InstantRadioDeals.com. Enter the promo code FIRE at checkout for 33.3% off the list price of select items. Liberty Flames individual game tickets, Liberty Flames season tickets for the upcoming football season, and Hill City Howlers skyboxes and general admission with a $10 food voucher. All through the end of August. 33.3% off the list price of those items when you enter the promo code FIRE at checkout.
Come join the chat or give us a piece of your mind. JJ Hendrickson 27 and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Similarities. There's some of them, but not a ton between Tyler Meeks, new head football coach of the LCA Bulldogs, and Frank Rocco, the former coach. But one of the things that Tyler Meeks mentioned at Seminole District Football Media Days was the fact that they're not going to deviate too much from what has worked, which is totally understandable.
I've been Coach Rocco and spent, majority of my formative years of my career for Coach Rocco. I mean, I think there's a way of doing things that I strongly believe in. So, I mean, it's very, very closely aligned with what Coach always did and taught. And from the rhythm of our season, from the way we handle workouts and the language of our offense and defense special teams, it's all very similar. And there's some tweaks, there's some subtle differences that are not atypical to any other usual year to year, just season to season as you adjust the personnel.
Tweaks, but nothing big. Honestly, I think that's the right approach, if nothing else. You got to put your own style on it, but don't go overboard with it. And a lot of it is there's so much retention around LCA from players, 20-plus seniors, to the coaching staff pretty much being the entire same staff and members and voices that are working in the ears of the players and people that are working with them, that you got to be true to who you are as a person. I think Tyler Meeks gets that, but you don't need drastic changes, which is why I think you're going to lose a little bit from Frank Rocco to Tyler Meeks. I think there's just a natural downshift from one of the best to ever do it in the area in high school football to a guy who has not been the head coach. You're going to be that. But I don't think it's going to be this big fall off where you go, oh my goodness, what happened to a once proud program? Does Bryson Gordon agree or disagree with that? That's where we bring in the newsadvance.com local sports reporter. BG, glad to have you back in the fast lane. I don't know how much of that you heard from us. If so, are we wrong? Are we right? This is where you get to put us in our place.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, as you mentioned, there are obviously going to be drawbacks anytime you go from, if there were a maybe there is a Virginia high school football head coaching Hall of Fame. Frank Rocco would be in there. He might even be on the Mount Rushmore. He's done a lot of winning at LCA. So I think anytime you go from a legendary coach like that, a guy who's been an institution at that school, to a first-time head coach, or at least a first-year head coach here, and Tyler Meeks, I think there are going to be natural step backs. I think where there's going to be good things for Liberty Christian is that, as he mentioned at Seminole District Media Day, a lot of the assistants are staying on. Obviously, they return a lot of key players on the offensive line, particularly and at quarterback with Luke Gaither. And so, I think in terms of continuity, you look back and you're like, man, why would Frank Rocco want to give up on this team? Why would you want to retire now? It feels like this is the team that has a chance to go win a state championship and send him off with a good legacy. But I think what he saw in that on the other side of that coin is that he saw an opportunity to set up an assistant like Tyler Meeks in a really good spot, give him a soft landing spot in year one where he has a lot of veteran guys, not just Gaither, but you look around the roster, they have a ton of older guys, and so that gives him a pretty soft landing point in year one and a good jumping off point, especially with all the assistants and everything to kind of build from in his first season. And I think he's going to do a fine job. I think that they're probably my pick to win the district this year. Certainly with all the talent that they have, they probably should. But we'll see. You never know. There might be missteps. That just kind of happens with a first-year coach. But I think in general, maybe some small differences. But I think you're still going to see LCA, working at the top of the Seminole for the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a really good spot. You mentioned it. How much of the faith in LCA is the timing of the move? Frank Rocco did this at the beginning of January. So, LCA is a big offseason developmental program, and they certainly were able to continue that. How much of it is the coaching staff? Pretty much everyone's back, and the same voices are working with the kids. And the fact that you've got 20-plus seniors on this year's team.
Yeah, I think it's a mesh of all three, which is probably why I think most people would pick them. If there's a state champion to come out of Lynchburg this year, I think probably you would imagine that them, maybe Jefferson Forest are probably 1A, 1B in that group. Obviously Jefferson Forest has some good teams in Class 4 to deal with, but LCA brings back a lot of the key players from last year, and so I think that in general they're probably going to be a state champion team, and a lot of it comes from having all those coaches, having all that understanding, that institutional knowledge, and then having the players who have that little bit of fire. And we heard that from Seminole District Media Day too, is these guys that lost a heartbreaker. I think it was a 19-point deficit or 19-point lead that they had in that state semifinal game up at Kettle Run, ended up losing that game. And so I think in general, when you have a combination of players who are driven like that, a coaching staff who's motivated, in their first year of everything, I think when all that comes together, it makes for what seems to be a pretty good year here upcoming for LCA.
Bryson Gordon of NewsAdvance.com is with us here in the Fast Lane. We have touched on the LCA Bulldogs in our 4 teams that we've previewed from the Seminole District. We've also touched on Amherst, Rustburg, and Brookville, which we'll ask BG about now. The others will hold off for the next time because we've got more of our own previews. They are doing theirs too, by the way, at NewsAdvance.com. It's worth subscribing to read BG's great work. What similarities are there? I know one's a first-year coach in Dustin Russell at Brookville. The other's a fourth-year and Chris Moore at Amherst. But what's the bigger similarity, or is there a bigger similarity between the two, which is once proud programs that are really striving to get back to that point amidst passionate and maybe high expectation fan bases?
Absolutely. I think you're right on you hit the nail right on the head there with both of those programs. As you mentioned, once proud programs, and it's not like these programs are far off. We have teams in the Lynchburg area who are further off from competing in the playoffs than say Amherst County and Brookville have. At least in recent seasons, right? It's been a tough run for Amherst County under Chris Moore going into his 4th year. Still looking for his first playoff appearance. But I think in general, they've probably been one game here or there each season from making the playoffs. So they've just kind of been on the cusp, and same with Brookville. They've had a little bit of their own playoff drought. It's going to continue this year with the postseason and eligibility, but I think they're going to take a step forward in the right direction in terms of winning. Dustin Russell emphasized this is a roster that hasn't won, haven't put together a winning season in their varsity careers. That's important to them. It's not competing for a state championship. Maybe it's not competing for the playoffs, but it's certainly something to compete for, something to go out and hang your hat on a weekly basis and say that you can go for that. So that's something I think will motivate Brookville on the upcoming season. And then for Amherst, I think it's a lot of that fire that really burned within LCA for different reasons. I think that's going to burn within Amherst this year. They have a lot of turnover in general, looking at probably losing their best player from last year and Trace Ligon, who's up at Fork Union doing a prep year. But Amherst County in general, yeah, I think you look back at last year, they were probably one away. As I mentioned, you flip that EC Glass result, and they probably are in the playoffs over EC Glass. And that was a really close game. Came down to the very end between those two teams. And so, they're going to have to win the games that they should. They're going to have to beat teams like Brookville. They're going to have to beat teams like Liberty. They're probably going to have to beat EC Glass to be able to, level up over them and make the playoffs in Region 4D, where it seems like it's going to be pretty stout. When you think about Jefferson Forest and NGW Danville are probably, certain playoff teams up there. So it's going to be a tough year for both teams. I think if obviously, certainly, Amherst has a better chance to make the postseason. They're the only team that can make the postseason of the two. But I think if I were to put a handicap on which team might, move up into the 6 or 7 win category, I think it might be Brookville. I think the schedule falls a little bit easier for them, and I think in general, just their path in the Seminole District with the talent that they have, and something about that fire. I think that if I were to peg one of those two teams for winning, 6 or 7 games, I'd probably say it would be Brookville.
So we'll stick with Brookville. We'll get to Amherst in a moment as well, kind of go a little bit deeper on these teams as we've done already. Fast Lane, Ed Lane, where you listen to podcasts and on our socials. And they're doing the same thing at newsadvance.com, where Bryson Gordon is putting that content out and generous enough to discuss it today here in the Fast Lane. For Brookville, what value is there? Can you even put a value on the fact that for a team that can't make the postseason this year, they've got members of their staff who are part of the Brookville lineage. They have players that are multi-generational and or have had multiple family members play for Brookville. The fact that there is literally that pride of playing for the front of the chest, the Brookville on the front, that can buoy them and help keep them focused and keep the fire going despite the lack of the end of season reward.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that's going to keep them going. I mean, you talk about not being able to play in the postseason, but as I mentioned, Dustin Russell said, we're hanging our hats on trying to chase a winning record. That has nothing to do with the playoffs. So they have found that if they have found something that they can play for, and I think that kind of turns in spirit kind of back towards what you're talking about with the Brookville legacy, right? Brookville is known to be this winning program. Well, you can't win a playoff game this year, but you can certainly post a winning record. So that plays into that, and then you kind of can build some momentum from there. Certainly, I think. Dustin Russell did a good job a couple of years ago when he was the head coach at Rustburg, took them to the playoffs. He wasn't brought back there, but going over to Brookville, having the year coaching their offensive line, I think he's a really good coach and somebody who certainly can kind of build a program. And so you think 5 years from now, if Brookville is back to, say what Brookville was, 15 years ago, if you're going to say that Brookville's getting back to that, you got to look back at a year like this where maybe it's like, hey, we knew we couldn't go to the playoffs, but we really changed our momentum. We changed our mentality and we just focused on winning. We focused on winning everything. Didn't focus on our record, just focused on, winning every single snap, winning every single thing, building that mentality. And I think years like this, for as negative as you can look at it from we can't play for a state championship standpoint, you can look at it from a positive standpoint, as in, hey, we can spend this whole year culture building, getting where we want to be. And then next year, whenever, they have a pretty solid junior class over there at Brookville, I think, whenever next year comes around and those guys are seniors, they have the opportunity to go make the playoffs, end on a really good legacy, maybe even make some noise in those playoffs.
Flipping from Brookville to Amherst, because we've seen some of the similarities between the two programs. They're in year 4 with Chris Moore. They're still trying to get over that hump of making the playoffs. The Amherst Lancers are. And Bryson Gordon of newsadvance.com discussing that with us right now in the Fast Lane. Depth or lack thereof is something that Chris Moore mentioned at Seminole District Football Media Days. What advantage does he have in terms of, he's been at VMI where, just generally speaking in the college football world, that's fighting with, hands and legs tied behind your back. And so you're used to having to find a way to win and not let that attitude turn negative. How much does that help Amherst fight that battle, particularly in the grueling early non-district schedule they face?
Yeah, you're just going to have to lean on those top guys even more. And I think for Amherst, it becomes, health becomes ultimately really important. Guys taking care of their bodies this time of year, whenever you're first out there and you're taking hits for the first time and you're really, thrown out of the action for the first time. I think this is when it's really important to protect your body, keep yourself healthy and ready for the long season. I think in Amherst's case, it's kind of, as I mentioned a few minutes ago with them, handle your business, like get the wins that you need to get, and then see where the dice fall from there. See what happens, after you get your 3, if you can win 2 or your 3 non-district games. Now, I think in Amherst's case, they play a pretty tough non-district schedule. I think they have, Sharando, and they have GW Danville in that mix. And so it's a tough slate. But I think if you're able to get to a floor of, 4 wins against the teams that you're able to beat, you should be beating, I think that really opens a door for you to have a couple of big games. You think about the EC Glass game, you think about the Heritage game. you're really going to need to flip, a game or two from those middle to top tier Seminole District teams. And so that's what's going to be important for Amherst this year. And keeping your guys healthy long enough to play in those games, get all the way to October and November, keeping them fresh. You're going to need to see guys develop along the way. But as long as your stars are healthy and as long as your best players are healthy, and in Amherst's case, probably Jaheim Jones will be the biggest name of them, their quarterback, who they really settled on in the middle of last year. Keeping him healthy, keeping him upright at quarterback whenever it's tough and you don't have a lot of linemen. All that stuff is going to be important for them because I think in general, they're really going to need to pick off, as I said, like a lot of those mid-tier Seminole District games to feel good about themselves.
BG, the other team we've previewed and you have as well at newsadvance.com, the Rustburg Red Devils. How much did it stand out to you, the fact that they're coming off a winless season, but the attitude could have gone either way, and it seems like it's gone the way of wanting to work, dig in, and try to turn that thing around quicker?
Yeah, absolutely. They bounced. The attitude has at least bounced back in Rustburg. And you think about from where they were 2 years ago. When Dustin Russell was the head coach a couple years ago, they were a 7-win team. They made the region playoffs. They played Heritage, who was a really good Heritage team that year, and ran into them. And so Rustburg hasn't been on this negative trajectory for say 5 or 10 years. It's been just a really quick decline. They had a down year last year. I think looking back on last year's results, they were 2 points away from beating Appomattox, who was a playoff team in Class 2. And so it's not like they're, extremely far away from being competitive, extremely far away from, being back to, possibly being in the playoff picture. But it really feels that way when you go 0-10. And so for, for Coach Ross to be able to turn the momentum around and to be able to at least sit there and say, hey, we endured what we did last year, but we feel like we've gotten the mentalities right and feel like guys are coming out and showing up and bouncing back. That's probably the most important thing you can ask for. You're going to see numbers dip a little bit. I think all high school football programs have seen their numbers dip a little bit. Just kind of the way things are going. But I think in general at Rustburg, coming off of such a tough year, to see guys be willing to come out, key players like Eric Pinnell, who was there at media day, guys like that who are willing to say, hey, I know it was tough last year, but I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to step up and I'm going to take this team and make sure that that losing streak stops in week 1, or we go in here and win 2 Seminole District games this year. It really is that's the kind of thing that sets a mentality, it sets a culture for a program. And so if you're Coach Ross, looking at year 1, I think this is probably a very tough year 1, but I think in general you have a building block now from a really good offseason to where you can say, hey, if we go in this year, win 2 or 3 games, it may not seem like we've, flipped the world on its head, but I think you can say that's improvement. That's our trajectory is pointing back upwards like it was a couple of years ago. And it feels like that's a big step they could take.
Bryson Gordon of newsadvance.com. We've had a chance to look to all the excitement of the football season. BG, the courtroom still calls and it is still a reality. EC Glass, LCA, Amherst all impacted in the Seminole District from the latest realignment. You can add in Nelson County among the local schools that have also been hit by this to a certain extent, and even the Liberty Minutemen who are also in that camp. There are appeals now that are coming to this. First of all, what can you tell us about the impact on realignment on those programs in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. So last week, the VHSL put out their first draft of the realignment proposals for not this upcoming school year, so not the one that starts this week, next week, but the one that start next year. So you're looking at the 2027, 2028 school year through 2031. And we had a few schools impacted. Amherst County was certainly one of them, EC Glass, one of them, Liberty Christian, another one last week. Who was impacted. Now, EC Glass and Amherst, they have decided not to appeal, at least from the VHSL list. So it looks like EC Glass and Amherst County are going to be taking a step down from, they compete in Region 4D in Class 4 right now. They're going to be stepping down into Region 3C in Class 3, alongside teams like Heritage and Brookville and Rustburg, kind of competing in what will feel like a lot of a local postseason. Jefferson Forest will be staying in Region 4D, kind of giving us, they'll be the biggest school in our coverage area, at least for the newspaper's purposes. And then kind of looking down at LCA, that was a big thing. That was kind of the big storyline, not even just here in Lynchburg, but I think statewide. Kind of caught a lot of eyes. Was a decision around, LCA moving down to Class 2. The VHSL putting out that recommendation based off their, grades 9 through 11 average daily membership. But LCA has since appealed, and so they're hoping to stay in Class 3 in Region 3C, which would put them in what would be that big region with teams like EC Glass, Amherst County, Heritage, Rustburg, Brookville, all those teams. And so last time, this is very similar to what happened last realignment cycle. LCA was dropped down into Class 2. They appealed. They actually won their appeal and stayed in Class 3. And so that'll be something to monitor over the next 2 or 3 weeks to see how that unfolds. The appeals are heard at the very end of August, and then usually right around the end of September, the new alignment is announced for the next cycle. So keep an eye on that. And then just looking at some other appeals that were brought up today, these teams weren't initially impacted in the first one, but they have, made their decision to appeal, and that's Liberty, Liberty High, the Liberty Minutemen, as you mentioned. They're trying to step out of the Seminole District. They'd like to compete in the Dogwood, and that's the same challenge and same appeal that they listed last time. They were denied last time, so we'll see what happens this time. Their ADM numbers haven't changed too much in the last 4 years. I think a big impact from 2022, in the 2022 cycle from the 4 years previous to that, but now they've kind of stayed steady. But we'll see kind of what happens with that one. And then I think the one that will catch eyes today also is Nelson County. They just won a state championship in girls soccer. They have a really good boys basketball program, but they've also decided that they want to step down and compete in Class 1. That would put them in a region alongside Alta Vista, William Campbell, and currently Smith Mountain Lake. We'll see. Smith Mountain Lake Christian is hoping to move into Region 1C as another one of those teams. And so a lot of movement. We'll see. The appeals generally aren't super successful. Just kind of looking at the history of how it goes. Kind of if the VHSL believes this is where your ADM for the grades that matter, that's where they're going to put you. And so we'll see. I do think, ultimately LCA probably will be successful and will stick at Class 3. I think that's best case scenario for a lot of stakeholders, LCA included. I think they'd like to be at the more competitive level in Class 3, and I think it'd be good for the VHSL. I don't think you want Liberty Christian, who a lot of people talk about, they're why they're even in the public school league. I don't think you want them competing in Class 2 whenever they've won as much as they have recently. So putting them in Class 3 where they really compete in pretty much every sport now, and I wouldn't sit here and say that they're overly dominant in Class 3. I think they fit really well in that profile, and I think that will be the biggest storyline to watch over the next few weeks.
Am I off base in just wondering, if LCA wants to play up and play a more challenging schedule, and let's be real here, they you have to go out of a certain school district and go to LCA on your own. So there's some element of that element in roster constructions for sports. I don't. Am I off base in not thinking that should be that big of a deal if LCA, hey, you're technically a 2A, but if you want to play a harder schedule and a harder path, go for it.
I mean, why would you stop anybody from doing that? I mean, I'm completely with you there. I mean, if you have a Class 1 school that wants to compete in Class 3, I mean, if that's what you guys decide you want to do, that's up to you. I'm all for less meddling and more letting people decide what they want to do. Now, in this case, I think with LCA, I think they were put in Class 2, obviously outside of their own wishes. This is the second time in a row that they've appealed. I think they find that they feel like they fit, pretty well in Class 3, and so we'll see what happens. And as I mentioned, I think that's a good home for them. I think if you push them up to Class 4, they're really competing against some really big schools, and maybe that changes things for them. And so, kind of putting here in the middle ground at Class 3 is kind of a perfect middle ground for them, I think, especially as you see some of their other programs, really start to step up and become super competitive.
Now, if it were the other way around, I'd view it differently. Like, let's just example, if JF wants to play 1A, that'd be preposterous. I know they're not going to, but just using that as an example. If you want to try to make it easier on yourself to that degree, that seems a little ridiculous. But if you want to make it harder on yourself, it's like I tell my kids,
by
you
all
want to make it
means.
harder on yourself, go for it.
Yeah, by all means, go for it.
BG, last one for you. Got about a minute or so. Todd Olson, it's going to be his last year as the girls soccer coach, the women's soccer coach over at the University of Lynchburg. They've had quite a successful run. Is it more the fact that, they've lost a number of successful coaches, or is the bigger story maybe the fact that, we'll see what happens with the internal promotion for Coach Beasley taking over for women's soccer at University of Lynchburg? Pretty much all the others have been pretty well filled by internal candidates there.
Yeah, they've done a good job promoting from within over there at the University of Lynchburg. You think specifically to the baseball program. Another Coach Beasley stepping in for Lucas Jones a few years ago after a national championship. And, Travis Beasley's done a phenomenal job keeping that going. And I think what you're going to see with the soccer program is that when you build a team that good, a team that consists in a program that good, it's gonna stick around, especially at the Division III level. And, Coach Beasley's been there for a while. She's been on staff. She played there. She's got a lot of familiarity with Coach Olson. So I think in general, it's going to be a successful move. And I think, hopefully, I think it will inspire, other teams to be like, hey, especially the Division II, Division III level, former players and assistant coaches, they tend to work. They understand the culture. They understand that they're not there to, put their thumb on the scale and change things. I think that's a big Division III thing, is that you buy into the culture. And so in general, I think it's going to be a good hire for Lynchburg. And I covered Coach Olson quite a bit. So sad to see him go, but, happy that he will have a good retirement, hopefully.
Bryson Gordon of newsevents.com with us in the fast lane. BG, good to chat with you. We appreciate you taking notes, and apologize we didn't get any Liberty Flames commentary today since you were at the press conference in person today and yesterday, unlike my slacking self.
No worries, man. It was a good one. I'm sad you missed it.
BG with us, making me miss it even more. That does it for us today in the Fast Lane. If you missed anything, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, where you listen to podcasts, check out his work at newsadvance.com. We're back tomorrow, 5 to 6 p.m. Thanks for listening to the Fast Lane on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.